That book's 250 pages. How am I supposed to get that in 15 minutes? Well, I'll try my best. Thanks to Stephen for inviting me to come and speak today. And it's also nice to see Ian Warburton and the main man himself, Malcolm Ray, here as well. For me, I'd just like to tell you a bit about my career. So, like Stephen said, I was a professional rugby league player who played just short of 300 games in my career at the highest level. I started off in the championship as a part-time professional for a team called Rochdale Hornets. So I was working full-time in a sheet metal shop, making air conditioning units and training Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday morning and playing on a Sunday, which was absolutely amazing. I absolutely loved my time in that shop and also as a professional rugby league player. But ever since starting rugby league, all I've ever wanted to do since the age of 6 is become a full-time professional rugby league player as my job. And in 2001, I got the opportunity to do that. So I played 80 times consecutive to Rochdale between 98 and 2001, and I got the Championship Player of the Year 2 years running. Then in 2001, I got the opportunity to sign for what was classed one of the biggest rugby league clubs in the world at Wigan Warriors. I played for Wigan for 5 years. In that time, I represented my county, Lancashire v Yorkshire. Played in the 2004 Challenge Cup final at the Millennium Stadium in Cardiff in front of 80,000 people in a Wigan versus St Helens derby, which is the biggest derby in our sport. Now, if you're local to the northwest, you'll know that Wigan and St Helens, both towns, are connected. The towns hate each other. The spectators hate each other. The clubs hate each other. The players hated each other even more. It was absolutely awesome. But what even more special for me was I was playing for Wigan, and my brother Paul, who's 2 years older than me, was captain of St Helens. So we were the first two brothers ever to do this in a Challenge Cup final, to play against each other. So you can imagine how proud my mum and dad were, the first two people ever to be sat there a minute before kick-off knowing they were going to win. How good was it for them? I was also lucky enough to play for England 8 times and captain England twice on the tour of South Africa. In 2006, I left Wigan. I did a year at Castleford Tigers. Then I did 3 years at Wakefield. Then in 2010, I signed a 4-year deal at Bradford Bulls. Still living the dream, still my full-time job. Me and my wife had 2 young kids. My future was secure. Things couldn't get any, and life couldn't get any better. So I signed for Bradford in October 2010, and then it was straight into pre-season training on the 1st of November. Now, any person on this call now who has been in professional sport or any sport know that pre-season is absolutely disgusting. It's the worst 3 months of the year by an absolute mile. You're getting flogged on the field, you're getting beasted in the gym. It's what I call 3 months of pain. It's horrible. But I was in my 3rd week of pre-season and we'd had a field session in the morning, been absolutely run ragged on the field. We'd had our dinner, and then at 1:30 we started a legs weight session. And I remember we'd been going about half an hour, we'd done our warm-up, I'd done some different exercises, some snatches, some cleans, some deadlift. And I remember going over to the squat rack. I put a heavy weight on the bar. I remember lifting this squat rack off the rack. I stepped back, I did a squat, and I felt really strong. I did another squat, and unfortunately on that second squat, I prolapsed a disc in the bottom of my spine, my L3-4. Now, when you prolapse your disc, a lot of people think your disc is moving out of place and trapping the nerve, which is completely wrong. What happens when you prolapse your disc is that inside every disc inside your spine, there's a soft toothpaste substance inside. When I did that second squat, that toothpaste substance squeezed out. It formed around the disc. Within a couple of days, it set rock hard like bone, and that's what was trapping the sciatic nerve, which were going down my right leg. I had no back pain at all. It was all sciatic in my bum, my quad, my calf, and into my foot, which meant I needed surgery. A week after the accident, I went in for surgery. I had the disc shaved. It released the sciatic nerve. I woke up in recovery, and all the pain had gone. I thought to myself, yes, I've got 11 weeks to be back on the field for round 1. I'm going to absolutely smash my rehab. I'm going to really smash my physiotherapy. I'm going to make sure I'm ready for round 1. Unfortunately for me, 2 weeks later, I woke up one morning at home and I was in the most unbelievable, unbearable pains that I can't even speak about still. I remember phoning the surgeon up and I told him that I was in agony. I couldn't get out of bed. I was throwing up everywhere. I felt sick as a dog. And he said, Danny, you need to come down and see me. He said, with you being an insulin-dependent type 1 diabetic, which I am, I was the only type 1 diabetic in the sport. with you having diabetes, there's more risk of you catching infection. You need to come down and see me straight away. But I couldn't get out of my bed. I couldn't drive over there to Manchester. So I phoned my dad up, who lived in Oldham. He came and put me up in Wigan, and he took me to the Alexandra Hospital in Cheadle in Manchester. I remember hobbling through the surgeon's door in his office. I walked through his door. The surgeon looked at me. He shook his head. He went, "Oh, Danny," he said, "I don't like the look of you." He says, "The pain you're in, your sickness you're showing, but your skin's got a funny colour as well. What I need you to do now is sit on this wheelchair. I'm going to stop what I'm doing. I'm going to take you for an emergency blood test and take you for an emergency MRI scan." So he wheeled me through for the blood test. I had that done. Wheeled me through for the MRI. I had that done. He took me back to his office and he let me wait in his office for the results to come back, which took 4 hours. And when the results came back, it showed that I'd not picked up an infection, but I picked up two massive MRSA infections in the bottom of my spine. I picked up a bone-eating infection called osteomyelitis, but I'd also caught sepsis as well, which is an infection that kills people. Obviously, it didn't kill me, but it nearly did. But what it did do, it meant me going straight from his office. I didn't even have a chance to go to see my wife, to see my kids. I went straight from his office, straight onto a ward, and I was in that ward for 3 months. They put me on the strongest pain-killing drugs that you can be on, so I was drinking Oromorph like it was water. I was taking OxyContin, an Oxynorm, a quick-acting and slow-acting morphine-based drug. I was on 100 microgram fentanyl patches, which is the closest thing to heroin, and I was having shots of ketamine every 3 hours, all strong opiate drugs that people get addicted to. And I ended up being on massive amounts of these drugs for nearly 9 months. And the withdrawal and the weaning off and the coming off all them drugs was just as bad as the actual injury, but I managed to get through it just. After being in hospital a week, they fitted a Hickman line in my chest, which was a small thin plastic tube that I had in my chest for 9 months. And what it used to do was go through the chest to my heart, and then at the front, it used to hang down at the front. And what they used to do was hook it up to a drip. So the antibiotics would go through the drip, through the tube, through my chest to my heart. My heart could then flush it around my body, then it'd get to my spine quicker than they would if it did it through a cannula in my hand. If after 3.5, 4 weeks, they did another MRI scan to compare it with the one that I'd had previously. And unfortunately for me, it was showing that the antibiotics wasn't clearing up the infection, but my back was getting worse. I remember the surgeon coming over to me, he said, "Danny, with the results of this scan, I've got to do further surgery, but I don't know what I've got to do yet until I open you up in theatre." So when the anaesthetists were knocking me out, I didn't have a clue what I was going to wake up to. I woke up in recovery after surgery, and I remember seeing the surgeon in the recovery suite, and I shouted him over. I said, "Doc, come here, please give me some good news, mate." I said, "I'm 30 years of age, I'm hitting my peak, I'm playing my best rugby, I just signed a new contract at a new club." I said, "But more than that, what means more to me is that I've got 2 young kids and a wife that depend on me. My wife's at home being a full-time mum. Everything that comes into our house, money-wise, is through my rugby." I remember him looking at me, shaking his head. He said, "Danny, I can't give you any good news." He said, "The damage this infection has done was so bad. I've had to take the full disc out at the L3-4 level. I've had to take the bottom part of your spine away, and I've had to fuse your back with metal cages, rods and screws." When I came out of that hospital after them 3 months, for the next 6 months, I was having nurses coming to my house 3 times a day. But I'd gone from being this professional rugby league player who's trained 2, 3, sometimes 4 times a day to being able to just about do this. I'd wake up in the morning in my bed, and with all the effort that I had in my body, I would get out of my bed and just about make it to my couch. That'd wipe me out for the day. At night, I used to get off my couch and just about make it to my bed. I couldn't even get to the toilet. I couldn't do any school runs with my kids. I couldn't help my wife at home. I couldn't go to rugby with Louis. I couldn't go dancing with Ellie. All the things that I used to take for granted, I couldn't do. And then I got a phone call off my new club, off Bradford. But instead of them paying my medical bills, putting me through physio, making sure I had some sort of quality of life, even if I couldn't play rugby again, Bradford did none of that. What Bradford rang me up to tell me was that they'd ripped up my contract. I lost my job, I lost my career, and then we lost our family house. When I had 2 young kids and a wife that I couldn't support, and that's when I started suffering from depression really bad. And I'll be brutally honest with you now, I couldn't get the thought of suicide out of my mind. Every minute of every hour of every day was I was going to kill myself. Should I get in my car, wrap it around a tree, take loads of pills, drink loads of ale? And it wasn't that I didn't love my family, my kids, my wife. I loved them more than anything. It's just that I felt like I was a burden to them. I thought, if I'm not here, someone would give my wife a better life than I can. Someone would bring my kids up better than me. I thought I was doing them a favour. So I did the typical bloke thing. When I'm having these suicidal thoughts, I did what all men do when they start struggling. I put that mask on. I started hiding my feelings. I didn't want to show people that I was struggling because I thought it was a sign of weakness. And I remember I kept these thoughts to myself for about 3 months, and then I found myself in the middle of Wigan in my car on a car park. In the passenger seat was a bottle of gin and a box full of opiate drugs that had killed everyone on this call. And I was going to take my own life. Now, for some reason, I didn't, but I don't know what it was that stopped me. I don't know whether it was my family came to me or I just bottled it. I don't know. Probably that. I probably bottled it. But if I try and go back to that place now, I'm probably happier now. I'm more passionate about mental health than I was about rugby. If I try and go back to that car park now, I can't get there. It's impossible for me to get there, which is a brilliant sign. I remember coming home from the car park, I was really cheesed off, I had a plan, and now I didn't know what I was going to do. So I got back on the couch, carried on ignoring my wife, I carried on snapping at the kids all the time. But the biggest thing that I did that changed in me, I started talking to my brothers just that little bit. I started opening up and telling them things that I've never said before. And I remember a week later, my mum, my dad, my wife walked into the front room and with a dining room chair. They turned the telly off, they sat in front of me, and they made me speak about how I was feeling. And I remember my mum's exact words now. She came in, she sat in front of me, she went, "Danny, tell us what's going on in your head. Please, we've all seen a massive difference in the way you're acting, the way you're treating people, the way you're talking, the things you're saying. Just tell us what's going on." So I did. And it was like an unbelievable feeling. I told them about the suicidal thoughts. I told them how I felt like I'd let them all down, how I'd lost everything because of me. Even though my injury wasn't my fault, I still felt my family lost everything because of me. And me just getting that off my chest for the first time was an unbelievable feeling. It felt like a massive weight had gone straight away. So we spent the next 3 or 4 hours talking and crying and talking and crying. And I was a rugby league player who used to love dishing it out. I used to love scrapping. I used to love getting banged. And I love the physical stuff, but I'm the most emotional guy in the world. I watch DIY SOS on a Monday night and cry all the way through it. So what? So what? It doesn't bother me. So we decided to go and see my GP. My GP put me on some metazapine and citalopram antidepressant medication, which helped me massively. But the biggest thing that saved my life more than anything was talking. And talking suits me down to the ground because it doesn't cost anything, and I'm tight. I used to speak to my counsellor from a clinic called Sporting Chance, which was set up by Tony Adams, the ex-footballer. And I used to see my counsellor twice a week for a month. Then it went to once a week, to once a fortnight, once a month, once every 3 months. And now we just talk as friends on the phone. So when I go out and I do my talks with State of Mind, and I talk about my story, we deliver workshops, I don't care if no one ever remembers my story. I don't care. But the 2 things that I want people to take away, and I want every single person on this call to take away, is that 1, if you are struggling, whether it's your home life, your work life, your social life, whether you're isolating, you're shielding, whether you suffer from anxiety, stress, depression, please speak to someone about it. Because I know for a fact, if I didn't speak to my mum, my dad, my wife that day, 100% now I know I would not be here. I'd have ruined my kid's life. I'd have ruined my parents' life, and my youngest daughter wouldn't have even been born. I cannot imagine this world without her. But the most important point I want you to take away from this is that you don't have to be on a rugby field or a football field to be part of a team. Every single person around you is part of your team. Whether it's a work colleague, a family member, a friend, a guy at the pub, the gym, the hairdressers, they are all part of your team. And if you see a difference in them, the guy who's normally taking the mick all the time, they've stopped doing that. The guy who's normally coming for a pint or a glass of wine on a Friday after work, they've stopped doing that. It's just ask them if they're okay. But please don't accept the stock answer is what we all give as, yeah, I'm fine. Don't accept that. If you've seen that difference in them, tell them you've seen that difference in them. You might give them that bit of courage to open up, and you never know, that simple question could save a life. And for me, just to finish with, the work that we do with State of Mind, we look at physical and mental health, how them 2 work hand in hand with each other. So you look at exercise. Exercise was one of my biggest antidepressants. It really was. You know, eating well is obviously massive for your physical health, but it's massive for your mental health as well. If you eat rubbish all the time, you're going to feel rubbish. Try and have a really good balanced diet. And every single person on this call will be good at something, and you will all enjoy something. But when you start feeling down and low in mood and the things are getting on top of you, the two things that you will stop doing straight away are the things that you're good at and the things that you enjoy. And also listen to music. If you can listen to your favourite music once a day, that can raise your serotonin levels in your brain. There's not a drug in the world that can raise it as much as listening to your favourite piece of music. I was lucky enough to, like Stephen said, to write my own autobiography, which makes me pretty proud because it is a #1 bestseller. Now, I believe it's more than mental health than the rugby league in it, which makes me pretty proud because the more people talk about mental health, read about mental health, and understand mental health, more lives will be saved. And what I know is that when people are able to talk about the rough times and do things to make themselves feel good, results in life can be so better. Thank you very much.